So we all know the story, right? The classic tale of human evolution.
The one etched in our minds.
Yeah, from the trees down to the savannah, learning to walk upright, hunt.
And eventually becoming, well, us. It's the standard narrative.
Exactly. It feels like bedrock, our understanding of where we came from.
Yeah.
But what if that story, that really familiar story, isn't quite complete?
Or, as some people claim, what if it's even deliberately wrong?
Ooh, okay.
It's a pretty big question, isn't it? And that's exactly where this idea, the Aquatic Ape Hypothesis, AAH, comes in. It challenges that whole narrative.
Right.
This theory basically says, hold on, maybe humans didn't just evolve on dry land. It suggests there was this really important formative time in our evolution.
Where we were living in or around water.
Precisely.
Yeah.
A significant period spent semi-aquatically.
Okay, and this is where it gets, well, really interesting for our deep dive today. Because AAH, it suggests some of our key human traits.
Like walking upright.
Yeah, walking upright and, our lack of fur, our hairless skin. AAH says these things are actually better explained by a past spent partly in water.
Not just by life on the savannah.
Exactly. Which is fascinating because, let's be honest, mainstream science mostly dismisses AAH. It's often seen as fringe, maybe even pseudoscience.
True. But the supporters, they don't just disagree. They talk about a kind of conspiracy framework around it.
A conspiracy? What do they mean?
They claim that, powerful forces, academic institutions, maybe others are actively suppressing the evidence for this aquatic past.
Why? Why would they do that?
Well, the claim is it could completely overturn accepted anthropology. It might threaten established narratives, funding, maybe even point towards, unknown civilizations or histories that people aren't ready for.
Wow, okay. So that's quite a claim.
It really is. So for this deep dive, we're going to tackle both sides. First, we'll look at the aquatic ape hypothesis itself. What are the arguments?
Makes sense.
And then we'll dig into this conspiracy framework, the alleged missing fossils, the ignored evidence.
And this idea that our origins might be, as one source put it, submerged, in every sense of the word.
Exactly. We're going to unpack all of that, drawing directly from the material you sent over.
Okay, let's dive in then. The core idea. AAH supporters call it the hypothesis that rocked the scientific boat.
And it wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It was first seriously put forward back in the 60s by a marine biologist, actually, Alistair Hardy.
A respected one, yeah.
Yes. And he suggested, look, maybe humans developed some key traits during a time when we lived along coasts or rivers, maybe in shallow seas, a semi-aquatic phase.
And when you start listing the specific traits they point to, it definitely makes you think twice.
It really does.
Yes.
Because for AAH proponents, there are just so many human characteristics that seem, well, a bit awkward if you only consider land-based evolution.
Like bipedalism, walking upright.
Exactly. Take bipedalism, that's clumsy in trees, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, it's not super efficient initially on open land either,
But in water.
But in shallow water, for wading, it's incredibly effective. It saves energy. The key idea here is that standing upright would have given an immediate advantage in water.
Easier to breathe, see over the surface.
Right. Much more immediate benefit than, say, trying to awkwardly stand up on the plains and immediately get chased by something faster.
Okay, that's a strong point. And you mentioned hairless skin earlier. We're pretty unique among primates in that way. How does AAH explain that differently from the usual savanna cooling idea?
Yeah, that's another big one, maybe one of their strongest arguments. I mean, look around the animal kingdom. Very few land mammals are as naked as we are.
Right.
But the ones that are mostly bare-skinned. Dolphins, whales, hippos. They're almost all aquatic or semi-aquatic.
Huh.
So AAH says maybe our hair loss wasn't primarily for cooling on land, but was an adaptation for swimming efficiency.
Yeah.
Less drag in the water. And maybe better temperature control in an aquatic setting.
Interesting. And what about that layer of fat we have just under our skin? That's pretty different too, isn't it?
Absolutely. Subcutaneous fat. Unlike other primates, who are generally quite lean, humans have this thick, insulating layer.
And the parallel is?
Again, aquatic mammals, seals, manatees, whales. This fat layer is amazing for buoyancy and for staying warm in water.
So not just for keeping warm on land during an ice age, maybe?
Well, it helps there too, but the AAH argument is that its primary optimization seems geared towards water. It's a significant difference from our land-based relatives.
Okay, another trait people talk about is breath holding. Humans are pretty good at that, voluntarily.
Remarkably good, yeah. Compared to other primates, our ability to consciously hold our breath for minutes. Well, that's super useful if you're diving for food or maybe hiding from predators underwater.
Which apes just can't do in the same way.
Nope, they lack that voluntary control. AAH supporters see this, plus things like the diving reflex in babies.
Where they automatically hold their breath underwater.
Exactly, and their heart rate slows down. They see these as clear evolutionary signs, fingerprints if you like, of a watery past. Features that just aren't really needed for a purely terrestrial life.
So if you line up all these traits, bipedalism for wading, hairlessness, fat layer, breath control, the AAH argument seems, well, coherent. It links them together.
That's the core appeal, yes.
So why the pushback? Why the academic backlash, as our sources call it? You mentioned mainstream anthropology dismissed Hardy right away. Why?
It was often called speculative, hard to test, lacking direct fossil proof.
Which we'll get to. But the reaction seemed almost visceral. Stronger than just academic disagreement.
That's what's interesting. Elaine Morgan, who became the most well-known advocate for AAH.
She's a writer, right. Not a scientist initially.
Correct. A Welsh writer. She argued really passionately that the resistance wasn't just about the science. It was about protecting the established narrative, the turf.
Protecting the savannah model.
Yeah. She suggested anthropologists were maybe afraid of having to rewrite all the textbooks, disrupting funding, maybe even undermining careers built on the standard story.
So the claim is it's institutional resistance, not purely scientific skepticism. What's the motivation supposed to be?
Well, supporters draw parallels to other scientific controversies, like how plate tectonics was initially dismissed, or arguments around cold fusion.
The idea being that inconvenient data gets buried.
Right, not because it's necessarily wrong, but because it's seen as dangerous to the established way of thinking. It's about who controls the story of human origins, fundamentally.
And this alleged resistance, it goes beyond just dismissing the idea. There are claims about hiding actual physical evidence, aren't there?
This brings us to the missing fossil evidence point. Critics of AAH always say, where are the fossils?
Which seems like a fair question.
It does. But the conspiracy angle flips it. They ask, is the lack of fossils itself suspicious? Or maybe not entirely surprising. We'll think about where fossils form best. Stable environments, right? Lake beds, calm areas, coastal zones, river deltas. They're dynamic, constantly changing. Water erodes things, scatters remains.
So if early humans were living there, their fossils would just be much rarer, harder to find.
Exactly. That's the basic taphonomic argument. But the conspiracy theorists go further. They suggest maybe some have been found and just aren't public knowledge.
Okay, now we're getting into whistleblower territory.
Sort of. Our sources mention these, rumors or leaked reports. Unverified, mind you.
Okay, important caveat.
Suggesting that some digs near old shorelines turned up strange hominin skeletons. Skeletons with features like inner ear structures adapted for water pressure, like modern divers have, or limb proportions better for swimming.
And the claim is these finds were, hidden?
Reclassified quietly, maybe?
Yeah.
Or locked away in museum vaults, that's the allegation, kept out of the public eye.
Wow, okay. And besides hidden fossils, supporters also point to existing traits, things we can see that they say don't fit the savannah model, traits that shouldn't exist, perhaps.
Right. Like our noses. Think about it, nostrils facing downwards. Why?
Doesn't seem particularly useful on dry land.
But very useful for keeping water out when you dive or swim. It's a simple thing, but proponents say, why evolve that specific shape otherwise?
Are there other subtle things like that?
There are. Some people point to the fact that a small percentage of humans actually have slight webbing between fingers or toes. A possible throwback.
Like a vestigial trait?
Maybe. And even our tolerance for salt water. Humans can actually survive drinking diluted seawater for longer than most land animals. Again, suggestive, they say, of a past relationship with marine environments.
So mainstream science might explain each of these away individually.
Right, ad hoc explanations for each one. But AAH researchers argue, look, taken together, these traits paint a coherent picture. A pattern that points strongly towards water.
And this connects to even bigger ideas, doesn't it? Like lost civilizations and sunken evidence.
It does. If humans spend a lot of time evolving in coastal areas, well, think about the end of the last ice age.
Sea levels rose dramatically.
Hugely. By up to 120 meters, or nearly 400 feet. Vast areas of coastal land, the continental shelves, were drowned.
So if early human cultures were developing there,
but entire settlements, maybe even proto-civilizations, could now be deep underwater, buried under silt and sand. Lost history.
And people connect this to actual underwater discoveries.
They do. Marine archaeologists have found strange submerged structures. Things like the Yonaguni Monument off Japan, huge stone terraces. Or Bimini Road in the Bahamas, those large paved-looking stones.
Mainstream usually calls those natural formations, though.
Usually, yes. Geologists often have natural explanations. But AAH supporters, especially the more conspiracy-minded ones, see them as potential proof. The footprints of our aquatic ancestors, or at least coastal ones.
And the conspiracy claim is that authorities avoid looking too closely.
Yeah, that governments or scientific bodies deliberately don't fund deep-sea archaeology in these potentially revealing spots, to keep our history literally submerged.
Okay, that leads us into some really shadowy areas, like the Navy connection.
Right. Several theorists point fingers, perhaps surprisingly, at the U.S. Navy. They highlight what they see as an unusual level of Navy interest in underwater anthropology.
I mean, the Navy is interested in the ocean, obviously. Sonar mapping, submarine stuff.
Of course, that's the official line, marine biology for operational reasons. But then you get these alleged leaked memos. Again, unverified.
Right.
Supposedly from the 80s, mentioning specific research projects on human marine morphology, which sounds different.
Morphology meaning physical form, adapted for the sea.
That's the implication. And there's one particular story that gets repeated a lot.
What's that?
A claim about a classified Navy dive, maybe in the Mediterranean. They supposedly found a remarkably preserved hominin skull in an underwater cave.
What was special about it?
The story goes it had those specific inner ear adaptations, the ones for pressure, just like modern pearl divers. Perfect aquatic adaptation.
And what happened to this skull, supposedly?
Sent to a Navy medical research lab and then vanished. Poof, never seen again publicly.
If true, that would be huge. Confirmation of aquatic adaptation and military suppression.
Exactly. That's why the story persists, even without solid proof. It fits the narrative perfectly.
It's striking how far some of these interpretations go. We're even getting into the merfolk angle in some of the sources.
Yeah, some fringe takes on AAH really lean into that. They suggest the aquatic phase wasn't just evolution. Maybe it involved contact with or even descent from other aquatic humanoid species.
Seriously, like actual mermaids or mermen?
Well, maybe not Disney mermaids, but think about it from a different perspective. Why do cultures all over the world have myths about these beings?
Water spirits, amphibious gods.
Exactly. Oannes in Mesopotamia, the Nomo, the Dogon in Africa. Beings who supposedly came from the water and brought knowledge.
So the question becomes, are these just myths? Or could they be like distorted cultural memories?
Memories of encounters, perhaps, between land-based humans and relatives who stayed more aquatic. Mainstream science says absolutely not. It's pure myth.
But the AAH conspiracy view leaves the door open.
It does. Under that framework, maybe such beings were real. Either a parallel hominin line that stayed in the water, or maybe parts of our own ancestral population that never fully came back to land.
Okay, so stepping back. If AAH has some merit scientifically, and if there is some kind of effort, conscious or not, to downplay or suppress it, the big question is why? Why hide the truth?
What are the deeper implications? Yeah. There are several conspiracy theories floated. One is simply control of the origin narrative.
Meaning?
Our sense of who we are, where we come from. That's powerful. Changing that fundamental story could destabilize cultures, religions, power structures. Some might not want that.
Okay. What else?
Another idea is potential strategic military advantage. Sounds sci-fi, but...
If aquatic traits could be reactivated, genetically engineered.
Exactly. Imagine soldiers who could operate deep underwater without bulky gear. Some theorists suggest militaries might be secretly exploring this, and AAH provides a potential biological basis.
That's unsettling. What about hidden resources?
That's another angle. If there are ancient underwater settlements, they might hold valuable artifacts, precious metals, maybe even lost knowledge or technology.
Knowledge that certain groups might want to keep for themselves.
Precisely. And finally, maybe the biggest reason proposed is fear of connecting the dots.
Connecting AAH to what?
To other suppressed histories. Lost civilizations like Atlantis, maybe ancient global catastrophes, even potential contact with non-human intelligences in the distant past. AAH could be one piece of a much larger, more radical puzzle that the establishment wants to keep hidden.
It's interesting, though, because our sources also mention modern research and the pushback. Apparently, recent science has offered some surprising support for AAH ideas.
It absolutely has in some specific areas. Marine biology, genetics, physiology of freediving.
Like what, for instance?
Well, studies have shown that when humans hold their breath and dive, our spleens actually contract to release more oxygen-rich red blood cells into circulation.
And that's significant because...
Because diving sea mammals, like seals, do the exact same thing. It suggests a highly adapted physiological response in humans, not just a trained one.
Wow. Any genetic links?
Yes. Genetic analysis has found specific gene variants related to oxygen transport and storage that seem to enhance underwater endurance. Those are more common in certain coastal populations who have dived for generations.
Like the Bajau people in Southeast Asia.
Exactly. The so-called sea nomads. They can dive incredibly deep, like 70 meters over 200 feet on a single breath, and stay down for minutes. Their bodies show clear adaptations. These are real, living examples that seem to resonate strongly with AAH principles.
So you have this growing body of suggestive data from genetics, physiology, yet the overall reception in anthropology hasn't really changed.
Largely no. Anthropological journals are still mostly dismissive or just ignore it. Elaine Morgan's books, which were quite popular, are apparently out of print in many places now.
Documentaries might mention it briefly, but frame it as quirky or wrong.
Often, yeah. Or just leave it out entirely. And some researchers who do try to investigate claim they face career hurdles, grants denied, papers rejected, ridicule.
Which suggests the resistance, whatever its cause, is still pretty strong.
It seems that way. It hints that maybe it's about more than just academic skepticism over specific data points.
Which brings us back to that deeper possibility you mentioned, the idea that AAH isn't just about our biological evolution.
Right. The most radical edge of the conspiracy sees AAH as maybe one crucial piece of a much bigger hidden history.
A history connecting human origins to things like global floods, shifting coastlines, maybe even ancient astronauts or advanced species.
Exactly. It opens up a whole Pandora's box of alternative history. If we were once aquatic or semi-aquatic, maybe our myths about floods and returning to the sea aren't just myths.
Maybe they're a kind of genetic memory.
Or a deep subconscious pull. Think about our fascination with water oceans, rivers that shows up in dreams, religion, our constant drive to explore it. Maybe it's a pullback to our origins.
And perhaps in some versions of this theory, the line between land humans and water humans, maybe it never fully closed.
That's the most extreme implication, yes.
Yeah.
That aquatic adapted relatives might still exist, hidden away.
So, whether you look at the aquatic ape hypothesis and think, interesting science, or you see it as a gateway to these much wilder theories, one thing seems clear.
What's that?
The whole debate, it's not just about biology, is it? It really feels like it's about who gets to tell the story of us, who controls that narrative.
Absolutely. You have the mainstream story, trees to plains, then the aquatic theory. Trees to water, then plains.
A crucial intermediary step.
But then there's that really radical claim from the conspiracy side.
Which is?
Maybe we never fully left the water at all.
Wow, think about that for a second. If that alternative history has any truth to it, what does it mean about us? Our deep connection to water, that pull we feel?
Could it be more than just fascination? Could it be a kind of echo? A genetic memory urging us in some way to return to the sea?
It's a powerful thought.
And until that alleged evidence, the stuff supposedly locked in vaults or lying into the oceans is brought out into the open, well, the true story of our possible watery past just remains hidden, doesn't it?
Like a secret hidden by the tide.
Exactly. Just waiting for the day it might finally rise to the surface.